All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for showing up to the Atari 2600 cage match. Now there will be no chairs flying, no baseball bats. So sorry if that's disappointing.
No
biting. Well, I didn't say that.
There might be chairs.
There might. Well, if it is, I'm not responsible. I just want to say.
How about climbing on the walls?
Yeah, right.
We'll think about that.
I think the walls are too wide.
That was my first thought, but I'll look around. You never know, there might be a...
So you guys probably already know the other gentlemen up here with me, Garry Kitchen and Tod Frye, who've done some amazing Atari 2600 work, and they can talk a little bit more about themselves as we get in, but I kind of wanted to jump right in because we don't have tons of time, but also, there's been a lot of panels where people are like, let's tell fun stories about the past, which is great, and I want those stories. But what I also want to talk about is you've got a couple of the most accomplished programmers, 2600 game designers up here, and I wanted to ask them, okay, if we're going to send you to a desert island, or if you're going to have to fight it out for sort of some of your favorite 2600 games, you can be a programmer and program something and it works. But this is entertainment, so there's a big part of this is a game has to be fun, right? And we know fun is a little bit subjective, right? So I wanted to ask these guys, okay, you've made these different games, Pac-Man, Keystone Capers, Save Mary, all these different games. What were the games that were fun for you guys? Who were the people that made games back in the day who understood fun versus maybe just solving these as programming problems? What are the top 5 games that you want to duke it out and you think those are the best games? So that's sort of where I don't know if we're going to go full Commodus and be like, ask them for thumbs up or thumbs down, but I wanted to start that conversation about what were the best games that you saw, and you could pick your own, but maybe let's make it fun and say don't pick your own. Like, what were the other games you're like, I can't believe, how did this person do this, and what did they do? And I wish I would have thought about that, and this is way more fun than that other game. Everybody likes it, from a technical standpoint, but it's a dog. What were the games that you guys really liked?
Well, there is a difference between, hey, how did they do that, or that's an amazing technical feat, and one being fun.
Yep.
I'll give you an example. To me, definitely top 5 was Space Invaders. It was a clean port. It played incredibly well, really well tweaked. I don't think nothing about it says to me, oh my God, how is it done? But it was amazingly fun, just incredibly fun. So that's definitely one of mine.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Was it harder than I think?
So, I got anecdotes, right?
Well, let's hear it. Let's tie them together.
Space Invaders was really tight.
And by the way, I don't know what's the name of the guy who did
Rick
it?
Maurer.
Rick Maurer.
Richard
Okay.
Maurer did Space Invaders.
Right. He did a great job.
And a couple of years later, when Rob Zadibla was working on Miss Piggy's Adventure, OMG, we wanted to use some of the Space Invader field, so I went and read the kernel, and it was awesome.
It was great.
It was really a clean way to do it. It was really great. It was one of those wonderful moments, that makes so much sense, so clean. And Space Invaders is definitely there. For me, of course, Breakout. Again, a thing that happened for me is Steve Wojda's prototype that became Taz was shocking to me because he only used 2.5K out of a 4K ROM. You had a lot of fun gameplay.
Yeah.
And it had a really good vibe.
Yeah.
Vibe. I'm a software engineer, for God's sake.
You're going to lose your credentials for saying that. That's almost like a feeling.
And it was educational because I went, I thought you should use all of the ROM for some reason or another and push the tech along with the gameplay. But he just went for pure feel, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, that's a super fun game, and I think if anything else, it gets dinged because it's licensed. It's like, wow, Taz, how serious can you take it? But it's a great game.
Well, so actually he built it just as a game, and then they made him slap a license on it.
Right.
Are we staying in the Atari logo, or are we going to
Go
Activision too?
anywhere.
Let's go wherever. Yes, let's hear it.
Mega Mania.
Yes.
That was a game I was totally addicted to, while I was working on another game,
Great.
I would take breaks and play Mega Mania. I mean, Cartwright really knocked that one out of the park.
Pitfall, Pitfall, Pitfall.
So good. You like Pitfall?
Pitfall's awesome.
It is
Well,
awesome.
it really changed the bar.
It
You
almost-
look at it, you said, what the hell?
It like almost created a genre.
Almost did, very close. Yep.
Why do you say almost?
Because I don't know enough to know that it didn't.
Right, a lot of people say it created the
Platformer,
little
right?
man jumping platform game, and I'm not sure. There may have been other things out there, but it came really close, like Todd said.
I don't remember. So one of the things that happens to me is when I look at this, it's like I think that Howard and I were working on the very first action RPGs, right? That's what Saboteur was. That's what Sword Quest was meant to be. And I know they were the very first action RPGs on the 2600, but I don't know that someone out in, say, the Commodore 64 or Apple II land wasn't. I know they were working on RPGs. I don't know when King's Quest was done. I think King's Quest. I don't know if that's, so I don't know enough to be able to make I do know enough to be able to make definitive statements about my ignorance, but I don't know enough to be able to make the definitive statements about the history of it. So I look at Pitfall, and it is, honest to God, the first side-scroller platformer that I have any inkling of. So he may have created a genre.
Yeah, it's very
I
possible.
don't know. Someone, now then I'll think there was like this little thing where you drove a cart across the moon or something.
Moon Patrol.
Yeah, Moon Patrol.
Moon Patrol.
Yeah.
That was a side-scroller. But it wasn't an yeah, this gets messy.
Yeah, it is.
But Pitfall,
that's a good
Pitfall,
point.
Pitfall.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you.
And
'cause-
River Raid.
River Raid.
Oh,
Yes, let's talk
River
about
Raid.
River Raid in a minute. But because I have a mic, I get to say things too. Pitfall 2. When I got Pitfall 2 as a kid, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, it felt like a game
Yeah.
that belonged to the NES.
It did. It really
right?
did.
I mean, do you guys feel that way? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
incredible.
amazing.
You know why that is?
Yeah.
Right.
A
Because
little help.
Yes, some hardware
I get a little help from my
accentuation,
friends.
right?
Yes.
What is that chip called?
The DPC chick for David Patrick Crane. Or the display something controller, DPC.
But when you saw that, I mean, were you guys like, okay, it's a little bit of a cheat, or you're just like, this is such it's so large, it's like got this huge world to it.
It was a giant market at that point. Unfortunately, about to collapse. But so for a giant market, if you're Activision, if you're going to throw more in the cartridge, that's fine. Yeah, it was fair. I mean, it was a tremendous piece of entertainment for the people that bought it. So, yeah, I don't consider it a cheat.
Yeah.
I don't consider it a cheat, not one little bit. My problem with it is that it takes the job of delivering entertainment and makes it from just figuring out what to do with the fixed base, it's the 2600, to what else can I put in the cartridge? Because that wasn't the first thing they put in the cartridge, right? It went 4K ROM, little bits of RAM extension using some of the 4K ROM address space, and that opened the door to anything you want to put out there that you can hit with the address bus.
Yeah.
And so there they are now, super, with these bus stuffing.
Yeah.
Bus
Yep.
stuffing. Sorry. Bus, it's you can stuff your bus if you want.
Just so you know, we're very open to.
Yes, very open to modern tech, but it's not like it's. No, it totally makes sense. But if I feel a little cheated as an Atari programmer because I didn't have the DPC.
I know. Everyone wanted one once they saw that.
But once you do that, then it's like what you're going to put out there is wide open. You can do
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
out there.
Incredible.
It's like.
Now, is that how? I mean, like we talk a lot about. I come from a design, not from development. I come from design, and we always say, hey, constraints are your friend, right? And if now opening up the doors, saying, hey, whatever you can fit in that cartridge, like you can do. Did that make your jobs easier to make fun games, or did it make it harder in some ways, removing some of the constraints?
Well, obviously, it never really happened because by the time that game was out, the end was within sight. Right. So there was never a discussion of me or anyone else using the DPC.
Yeah.
So, but it's a good hypothetical question.
Yeah.
No, you would have used it and you would have loved it and it would have expanded what you could do. Mm-hmm. It's all about entertainment.
Yeah. Tod is thinking, which is always a dangerous
Well,
thing.
no, I mean, so the thing is, there we were. It's like, I like to count things in terms of multiples of 2 years or 3 years, Moore's Law iterations. So there we are in 82 with 2 or 3 iterations, cycles of Moore's Law since they made the chip. The expectations of the consumer were exceeding the gate count of the 2600.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, I was talking to someone about this earlier. Howard has this line, my friend Howard, another famous 2600 programmer, about Hollywood, where some business analyst in the 60s said the thing about Hollywood is no one knows anything. And the thing about this was, it was the very first console generation and no one knew anything. And they were trapped with this anemic little Atari 2600. It's like they could barely make any noise and could barely put a picture on the screen. And we were trying to keep the consumers to make more sophisticated games. It turns out, and you can totally see this by going and looking at something like the Elder Scrolls or Starfield, consumers like prettier pictures. It's like
They did.
consumers like prettier pictures,
Yeah.
so they're going to use the DPC. So we would have used the DPC. We were looking at a way to get, basically we use gate count to entertain. I'm a little esoteric, but we use gate count to entertain, and we were trapped in the anemic little low gate count 2600. So anywhere you could get more gates. You'd make a 7800, you'd make a DPC, you'd put 128 bytes out on the address bus, you'd use 32Ks, 8 banks, you'd do whatever you could. And I don't know. I like to stick to 8K cartridges when I think about trying to make a 2600 game now. But that's because the artificial constraint is entertaining.
Yeah. Now that's entertaining for you. I mean, because it's right. It's part of the challenge, and it's part of like, okay, the kids these days would say, "Is that a flex?"
Kids these days,
right? What they say, that's a flex, right? The idea is that can you do that, right? Can you make an entertaining game? But for for fans and also for you guys, when you're you come home after a hard day, okay, I'm gonna play a couple games. Did those constraints make that game more fun for you?
No.
No, there are 2K games that are really fun, and there are 8K games that are terrible.
Yeah.
So no, it doesn't.
Right.
Fun and pretty are different things, and it made it prettier.
Well, it's not just. So you can go the exact opposite direction. Like these guys, this huge company is eating Activision. And Activision, actually, you think of it as Activision, you think of it as Call of Duty. But what Activision really is Candy Crush.
Yeah, right. They had a lot of Candy Crush there.
I mean, no, it's true. It's like Activision owns King. King has Candy Crush. If you look at Activision's revenue, it is mostly King, right?
Yeah.
So basically, Microsoft is trying to get a little 2E game. It's like, so fun and huge are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
All the way back to the pre-Taz demo, where like one of the most things I ever one of the mostest funnest things I ever did on the 2600 was play that that wonderful little prototype of a fun gameplay. I don't know that it had the depth, but it was fun.
Yeah, fun's everything.
Yeah.
Which brings you to River Raid.
Yes, let's talk
Which
about
is one of the best, most fun games on the platform. A dirty little secret.
Mostest funnest.
Mostest funnest, yes. A dirty little secret is internal Activision didn't want that game to go out.
Why?
Well, because there was, at Activision at the time, there was a caste system where you had the senior designers, the founders of the company,
And women.
and you had everyone else in the design department. And anything anyone else did, developer-wise, it didn't go out if it didn't go past those 4 guys. I was never really included in that. So, it had to go past them. And they didn't
Alan,
like River Raid.
Dave.
Bob Whitehead, Al Miller,
Al Miller.
Larry Kaplan, who had
Larry?
left. Yeah, he had left.
Larry was always had a weird position
Yeah,
at Activision.
he did have always.
So
have a
the
weird
Monday
position.
I started at Atari was the Monday after the Friday that Bob and Alan and Dave left. But Larry was still there.
Yeah, he left a little later.
He left like a month later.
Yeah, which pissed everybody off, but what are you gonna do?
Right.
He was supposed to.
You're going to complain
was in
about
all
it
the
42
meetings,
years later.
But he got cold feet on the day of. But the problem with River Raid to them wasn't that it wasn't pretty enough. It was double line resolution in a lot of places. But she made those decisions. Carol made those decisions to make the game more fun.
Yeah.
And as much as there was concern of it doesn't look like an Activision game. It didn't matter in the end,
Right.
because everybody said, look, this game is crazy fun.
Yeah.
And we got it out, which was a great thing. I was for it going out, certainly. I don't know who on the other coast wasn't. I was on the East Coast at that point, so I don't know who wasn't. But I know there was a lot of resistance. And it's
Yeah.
ironic because that game went out and did big numbers.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense, right? The idea is that, like, you obviously want both. You want it to be beautiful and fun.
Yeah.
But there are also, I mean, maybe this is throwing shade, I don't know. Barnstorming, beautiful,
Yeah.
Not that fun.
beautiful. One of the most beautiful games ever on that platform.
not that fun.
No, it was Grand Prix with airplanes.
Yes.
Here's a quick 2-second Carol Shaw story on River Raid. Dave helped her with some of the sounds. And the anecdote that they always tell, which I wasn't there, but people tell me it happened, was they're sitting, the designers were all sitting in cubicles with going around the outside, but facing each other inward. So you could turn and ask somebody something. Or say, hey, what do you think of this screen? You know? So Carol is sitting there and she says, I need like an alarm sound when you're getting low on fuel. And Dave, who, you know, Dave's not a big conversationalist, he's sitting there and he goes, LDY 1, load the accumulator, decrement Y, blah, 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 blah. And she's sitting there typing away. And she assembles and it goes, whoop, whoop, whoop. And she goes, perfect. And that was it. He just did it in his head while he was doing something else.
That's crazy.
It's really funny.
There's a line that we went right past there about double line res graphics, decisions made because for fun.
Yep.
So I find myself, this is the place where it gets interesting is, could there have been a way to have made single line res with the same fun?
In River Raid, for example?
In River Raid, for example.
Yeah, I think
Because I
you
mean,
could've.
obviously, I don't know,
Yes,
because I'm
I
not
think
going to
you could've.
rewrite River Raid, for God's sakes. But this is a place where actually, for me, it's interesting, because here it is, here's the pre-TAS, a fun mechanic, not an actual game, fully fleshed out mechanic. I don't know if it has the depth to go on for an hour or weeks or a month's worth of gameplay. 2.5, maybe 3K of ROM. It's like, why are you wasting all that ROM? And so this is the intersection between technical acuity and content acuity. And they're saying, if it looked better and the gameplay was the same, does it, I'm going to use a hippie word, another 4-letter word, does it vibe better? Does it feel better? So this is why the 2600, I mean, why go past the 2600? The 2600 could play fun games.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, why did we, who needs a stinking Nintendo? You can do Mario with.
You heard it here, you guys.
No, honestly,
Well,
think
stinking is
about
not
it.
potty mouth.
Yeah.
But no, it is kind of a question. It's
But,
like-
but would River Raid have sold one more unit if it was single resolution versus? I don't think so.
Oh, I think so.
You think so? You think would it?
Oh, yeah, I
Do you
think
guys?
it would.
What do people think? Do you think
If it played exactly.
it played exactly the same?
Might
And
have
what-
sold like one more.
And was a little prettier.
Yeah, just a little pretty. I don't think it would have mattered.
I think it would have been.
I mean, look, for God's sakes, look at Minecraft. Minecraft taught us, hey, if the game's fun enough, graphics don't matter.
So, in 2002, VP at 3DO said, you know, the 3D graphics of the Xbox, to me, 3D Xbox graphics are as good as anyone needs.
Right, ever. Ever. That's it.
It's the Bill Gates
Stop.
defense, right?
So actually, he's not an X. He did. This is not 640K of RAM.
Right.
But it's like something. There's something about photorealistic. There's something about the arc towards aesthetics.
Yeah.
Where I think if it had single line res, it would have sold
Okay. It could have.
some percentage more.
Yeah, it wouldn't have sold less, I'll tell you that.
It would not have sold less.
No.
And okay, so that means it's more likely it would have sold more
Yes.
than it would have sold the exact
Yep.
same. I think that's,
Well, 'cause-
so I may not understand probability.
Well, because now we're talking about in some ways we're talking about marketing. We're talking about how does somebody discover a game. Maybe you just saw the game before you ever got to play it. Maybe you get a chance. It's why we create box art. It's why we
Yeah.
all those things that we do to pre-sell you, to pre-load those feelings that you have positive for this maybe before you ever touch it.
What did you think of Missile Command? Going back to other games.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Rob Fulop. Brilliant.
A, brilliant, and B, I just love the coin up so much. It's like that.
Yeah.
It's like
It's hard though.
It's
If
just
you love
not
the
fair.
coin up, did you like the 2600?
I didn't give the 2600 like the time of day.
No, because you just were addicted to the coin up. Love
Well,
the coin.
no, because so this is actually the cage match thing is really hard for me because I liked Defender and Robotron, Missile Command. It's like these are the only games I liked. It's like Pac-Man. Are you kidding me?
Too soon.
It's another 20 years I can say that. This guy came up to me and said, "I wish you'd done Defenders," and he's right. I would have done.
Hey, I think we should give Todd enormous kudos for doing what he did. He
100%.
got that game out.
100%.
It sold a bazillion units.
Bazillion games.
And he should be proud of it, and he is proud.
I am proud of it.
Yeah,
And I learned
absolutely.
a lot. And all of my apologia for Pac-Man have been recorded at the PRGE on various videos that
Yes.
are available online.
Well, and we spent a chapter in my book, Todd and I talking about the whys of this. And I'm not a defender of Pac-Man.
I am.
But I would say that it's a great game. And as a kid, I loved playing it. And I also
Okay, so back to work.
yeah. All right. Yeah.
Listen, I thought you loved
We
it.
might have talked about this once or twice.
I did this game for Nolan called Save Mary. Right at the end, Nolan somehow sweet-talked the Tremels. Nolan must have been able to sell snow to Eskimos. Because
I believe it.
2,600
Yeah.
carts did the Tremels in 1988. It's like, OMG. So I did Save Mary, and the first pass of it was Save Mary, but the cliff walls were in 4-pixel resolution playfield. And they said, "Ew, it doesn't look as good as we wanted." And it took a tremendous amount of work, actually, to get single line res into the cliff edges. But I did. Now, it looked better.
Yeah.
It didn't sell anything.
Yeah.
It's just being released now, actually, which is funny, which is hella funny. So that's the thing where it was just made to look better, even though it didn't change the play at all.
Now you mentioned Defender. Chopper
2600.
Command.
Chopper Command.
Activision.
Wow.
That game was awesome.
That game.
I mean, it basically kind of is. It is.
It is,
right.
really. That shot, when you fired and you got that fiery shot that was ended up like this long,
Changes color while
that
it
was
goes across.
that was
Yeah.
damn awesome. That was Bob Whitehead, who is unsung hero
Did
of
he
that
do
era.
the horizons, the hills on the horizons?
That's a very good question. Who did that
Who
first?
did
I
that?
don't know.
Because that is an Activision
thing, right?
Absolutely signature.
vibe. I'm using that word too much.
Yes.
But
Berkeley.
that is a
It was
great.
before I
It's an
got
Activision
that
smell.
Activision, so I don't know. I don't know who did it.
But
The
Chopper Command.
sunset.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's a great looking game. Even like the treads on the trucks that are rolling by. I mean,
Yeah.
it all looked really, really good.
Yeah.
So the thing there is we were mastering the kernels that reuse the players vertically down the screen.
Yep.
And that wasn't, I didn't do that in Pac-Man. I had a kernel that did it, but I had to throw it away because I ran out of time to finish it. Now, I had the kernel, but I didn't have the Flickr manager, which is a completely different thing. A game like Centipede very, very strongly uses vertical separation of the players. It's like this player, we reuse players 2 or 3 times down, 4 or 5 or 6 times down the screen until we run out of RAM. Defender, we hadn't really captured that. Now, the Space Invader kernel, what was interesting about the Space Invader kernel is it was a straight 76 lines across.
Right.
And the way he moved it across the screen and down is just putting a delay in the VSync.
That is brilliant.
So he just moved the whole thing. It was one chunk.
Yeah. Audience is going.
You totally understood all that, right? Right? Everybody got that? There's going to quiz later?
So it was like 76.
I've never heard that. That's amazing.
No, that's why when we dug it apart to put it into video, it went, whoa, this is so simple.
Yeah. Who did, what was the one?
E.T.?
No, Berserk.
Berserk was Dan Hitchens.
That was really clean, too.
That was really clean.
That was really clean.
So what was happening in all of this time is that the Atari 2600 was made to do about the games that were being done by Coin-Op in 1976. None of those used microprocessors. They were all my MSI, remember medium scale integration, 100 chips. So the famous story of Steve Wozniak being paid to do a chip reduction count on the breakout board.
Yeah.
100 chips, $1, some $100 for every chip you can remove, whatever the story was. I don't remember the details. And that was what the Atari 2600 could do. And what happened is the Atari 2600 stayed trapped in time, as such a genome will. It couldn't evolve. No, it could evolve because it used ROMs, and the ROMs were programmable, and we got clever and clever about what we did. But the games that we were comparing against, what game developers and game designers were doing with Coin-Op kept on advancing with Moore's Law underneath their sails, so the games kept on getting cooler and cooler. A $500 Coin-Op machine could do more and more and more, and a $50 VCS was stuck where it was stuck.
Yeah.
So we had to get smarter and smarter and smarter, and we got smarter, and we got clever. We learned more about the 2600.
We did.
And that's why Chopper,
Yeah.
I forget his name. Activision Games. That's why,
Chopper Command.
Chopper Command. That's why we could do Centipede, right? But a lot of thought went into working around the fact that the Atari 2600 is made to play combat.
Yeah.
And Pong.
Well, let me ask this question. So, that just assumes that, we're taking these much more sophisticated, Coin-Op games, and we're trying to port them to a system that it's a challenge. Did you guys ever resent that idea? The idea that, we should just let the 2600 be what it is and make original games?
No, there was so much money in the Coin-Op boards.
So,
You had to do them.
Yeah.
Two things. We were letting the 2600 be what it was. What the 2600 was a device that could deliver the Coin-Op experience to the living room. That's what it was designed as. That's what it was made. And it lost, so we kept on doing that.
But it was an arms race, right? And eventually it was going to
we
sort
got
of lose.
crushed.
Yeah. I mean, no one knew that until Space Invaders.
Yeah.
The sales of the console quadrupled as soon as the Space Invaders cartridge came out. Everybody said, "Oh, I can get that on that machine."
Space Invaders did 1 million units.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then it became, all right, Space Invaders, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man. That really started. Let's hit the really big ones because we learned they drive everything.
Well, Atari had always been internally moving internal
absolutely.
IP to what Sears Televideo, Atari Super Pong. I don't even know. I mean, I remember playing things that hooked up to TVs in the mid-70s, but I don't remember it really clearly. It's been a while.
Quadrupong.
Any particular reason why you don't remember it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, marijuana. As a matter of fact. And, wow, it's like marijuana.
Yes, that was always
So
their plan.
we were always,
Yeah.
always trying to bring Atari IP from the arcade to the living room.
Yep.
The real thing was when, and who knows if they had not sold to Warner, the new businessy types from Warner, went, we can move other people's IP to the living room. Let's
Yep.
go get Space Invaders.
Yeah.
Well, right. And
Was
if,
Space Invaders the first external IP that Atari did? don't
I
know.
think it was. I mean, it's a landmark.
yeah, I think so. But I mean, like, if Nolan wouldn't have sold the company and would have said, hey, you know what, 2600 is old tech, let's move
Yeah.
to something else, maybe none of that happens.
Oh, they
That's
did.
true.
Actually, they
Right, but
invented-
a lot faster, maybe.
the 400, 800,
Yes.
as a matter of fact, is, again, no one knew anything.
I think it should have been a game machine all
The
along.
400 was a game machine.
Yeah.
It was designed by the people who designed the Stella. It was designed by the people who designed the Amiga. You can actually see the cognitive framework of the way they approach
Yeah.
design
Yep,
in
absolutely.
all three. The 400, 800 was intended to be a keyboardless console to replace the 2600.
Yep.
But what no one could figure out to do was what to do with the installed libraries that people had. It was not going to be possible. I don't know why this makes any sense, because everyone who had, I think business people, I worry about them. So the 400, so what happened is the Warner management saw what was happening with the Apple II and said, we should make it a home computer.
That's exactly what happened. And
That
that was
is
such
exactly
a
what
stupid
happened.
decision.
Well, we'll never know, but I like to think that the 400, 800 chipset would have made a good 2600 replacement, and it would have been available in 1981, and you would have had an alternate history where Nintendo wasn't as
Nintendo
big a deal.
isn't swooping in
And
85 with powerful
Sega
hardware.
isn't such a big deal, and we are able to chase coin-op IP for another 3 years.
Yeah.
But no one knew how to do a console transition. No
Okay.
one knew about installed base.
Yeah.
No one knew about backwards compatibility.
Yeah, well, that stuff hadn't been figured out yet.
I don't know that it's
It's still not figured out.
I don't know. It's the Xbox, whatever it is, backwards compatible to the PlayStation 2 I forget.
Well, there's always been this question of why does it have to be backwards compatible? You still have the old machine, for God's sakes.
Right.
Yeah, I know, but why didn't they think of that then?
I don't know. What, you're making it convenient that you don't have to use 2 plugs in your living room instead of one?
called-
I mean, who
You got to
cares?
do the Apple thing, sell an adapter, right?
Yeah.
There's 2 of them.
And there is that famous story when they decided to switch to being a computer. They gave the game designers the job of building the operating system, Al and Dave and all them. But they also hired this idiot kid from college to write BASIC because they knew they had to have BASIC. And Al Miller was in charge of him. And he did such a terrible job, he eventually fired him. And it was Bill Gates. So Al Miller likes to say he's the only guy who's ever fired Bill Gates. And they got BASIC somewhere else.
But it was terrible.
But Al Miller and Al Miller, David Crane, and maybe Bob Wayhead did the OS. Because it was like, oh God, Apple, hurry, put aside what you're doing. We need an OS for this computer we made.
Well, and companies are still doing that, right? Look what Apple's done. Let's do
Yeah.
that, right?
Well, what about, the prime example of that is BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Change your whole strategy the minute you see an iPhone. If you've seen that movie,
Yes.
actually read the book,
Yeah.
and it's such a brilliant, disciplined company suddenly turns into a bunch of idiots.
Yep.
Did
That's
they
a
get
great movie.
disrupted?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, they did.
First they laughed at the iPhone, and then they said, "Hey, why don't we do a machine that has a touchscreen?" When they were so known for that keyboard.
But you
Yeah.
guys had a 400, 800 console in the 5200, essentially.
That was an afterthought.
I was gonna say, what happened there? Because it-
Bad joysticks.
The controllers.
That's what happened.
Oh, what happened there? Too little, too late?
yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, that's a damn good question. When did this,
Which was first? I mean, internally, because they also had the MIT guys do the 7800.
GCC did the 7800. The GCC guys did the 7800
Right.
and sold it to us.
Yep.
And why didn't the 5200? Well, they're
5200 was done already, right? Before the 7800 was
I'm
started.
not sure of that.
I believe that's
I thought the
case.
7800 sat around for a while internally. And I actually thought the 7800 didn't come out until Trammell. Am I wrong with that? I think I may have.
No, that's true.
Yeah. Like he
In
came out
late
and said, well,
84.
this is done, why aren't we using it?
Right, they got caught up in that whole.
Yeah, the whole mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, losing $500 million in 3 months, that disrupts things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
probably the 5200 did not succeed. Speculation. That's why I say probably. I don't know, because we didn't get behind it. We didn't push it. And it was a little late.
Yeah.
I mean, the intention was to have what was the 5200 out in 1982. Or 81.
And by the time the
But
7800 came out, the Nintendo bus had started to roll up the highway, and that was unstoppable.
Yeah, well, and it was still, and the NES was still new. It hadn't penetrated to the whole
Well,
country yet.
yeah.
But yes, I mean, it's a quantum leap, right?
Yeah, and a much bigger catalog. Yeah,
Well, but also I think the games showed that what was possible.
It actually
yeah.
harvested all of the gate count potential generated by Moore's law.
Yeah, it did. It did.
If you
I
want to say it in a
actually
really
think that
sexy way, yes.
Yes, that's a very good
Doesn't that
point.
sound really sexy? Harvested the gate count.
I think you should write that one down.
Yes. All right, let's come back to the games that really captured. What were the other games for you guys that let's talk about games that didn't work so well. And you don't need to throw shade at other programs.
Okay.
But what were the other games you're like, oh, that could have been this and it wasn't, or that never really worked and we did it because I don't know.
Okay, so you look at things like Defenders was awful.
Yeah. I agree.
So I had breakfast with Howard this morning. That's Howard Scott Warshaw. Very, very dear friend. And he gave me permission to throw him under the bus a little bit. So as I alluded to earlier, I feel like Howard and I were, in the same way that Pitfall was creating the genre of side-scrolling platformer, we were trying to mix, Sword Quest was intended to be a lot of the D&D kind of mindset and a lot of the stuff that goes into adventure with twitchy little coin-op games intermixed. So it was supposed to be an action RPG. And Saboteur, which was not a Saboteur, the A-Team was supposed to be, it got a facelift when we lost the license. It just came out recently. It was, and Howard's, not yours at all, but Raiders of the Lost Ark was supposed to be like an action RPG, an action adventure. I don't think there was any framework or context so when Howard got, E.T. was a debacle. Howard, I think with a tremendous amount of hubris and arrogance, decided to make it some sort of action adventure like the movie. Not action adventure, some sort of adventure game, an RPG, like a text game or something. I just want to say that I've had this conversation with Howard. I think he should have gotten help. I think there's something,
You're saying programming help, not therapeutic. Just want to clarify.
I think he should have had help choosing better pharmaceuticals. And get extra staff. He should have had someone else do the audio for sure. I mean, any audio, you could have had someone doing the audio for 4 weeks.
Yep.
Right, instead of doing the audio for 3 days at the end. That's how many?
5 minutes.
Thank you. See, it's like I can't see her hand, so I have to ask, how many fingers is that? How many fingers is
It's
that?
a test.
Yeah, my cousin Vinny.
I really feel like he should have, like E.T. is unfortunate. It's I think he should have gotten a couple people to do mini games for him and should have been the author there. And he'll say, well, the overhead of doing communications would have been like such a hassle. The thing is, our culture was really one person, one product. And I don't think that was the right culture at all, ever. I know that GCC had usually two-man teams, two-person teams, two-man teams. One doing the display and one doing the logic, the gameplay. And I think that always made an awful lot of sense. And that wasn't necessary when you were just doing combat.
Yeah.
Although the GCC guys would say this, and they have said this to me, that they consider themselves maybe less auteurs and less creative, and they were really good, like, here's the spec, here's what we're making, let's make it.
Yeah, like pole position.
Right, and it's a little bit of a, I don't want to say assembly line, but it's a little more straightforward, right? Versus, maybe that's, is that part of it?
There is one thing about GCC, which there was a day when we assembled the listings of all of our most sophisticated programs in Sunnyvale and shipped them I understand that some Atari executives own stock in GCC, but
GCC was a bunch of MIT guys
who were doing games.
Damn bright.
They created Miss Pac-Man.
And started consulting with Atari.
And we sent them copies of all our most interesting games. And later on, when we got listings back from them, I will say, with no false humility whatsoever, a lot of their tech looked a lot like what I had done in Pac-Man.
Of course.
Horizontal columns.
Of course. It's the only way they were under great pressure. They were really trying to deliver quick.
Yeah.
So you use what's done.
Okay, so we have like 2 more minutes. Are there any questions from the crowd? Sir, yes, sir.
So at the beginning, you talked about constraints and sort of the benefit of working within those constraints. And like Space Invaders is a great example, like the original arcade, the classic thing of like, it worked perfectly because the more enemies that got taken off the screen, the faster it went, And like, that very much resonated with me also on like Super Nintendo, like before I understood coding, like slow down when the game got busy, I thought was like bullet time, slow motion, So I'm wondering if there's any examples of things you did where you like felt like the game really benefited from working within those limitations as opposed to, trying to force more out of it.
Great question. So what were there examples of when using the limitations actually really benefited the gameplay?
I really can't think of one, honestly.
I always wanted to push it to the max.
That's my thought exactly. I can't really think of any, honestly. They're probably, obviously the answer is yes, right? If you'd had enough capacity to do Elder Scrolls, you would have wasted a 100-man team for 10 years working on it. So the limitations made it possible.
Sure.
One last quick, was there a hand? Sir, yes, sir. Yes, it's you. Yes, sir.
More of a personal question. With the, I guess, kind of surge in popularity of like, kind of homebrew games, have either of you ever considered like making a new game like as a hobby, like in your off time?
You can buy mine.
Yes, he's already doing that.
It's over at the booth, second row in on the right.
What's it called?
David Crane and I started a company called Audacity Games. And what we did is we created a brand new original 2600 game. Took 3 years to do, released it about a year and a half ago, and we did it to emulate 1983. It's got a 4-color box, 4-color label, new plastic. We made a tool and actually had the new cartridges done. Beautiful manual, patch if you get a high score. It's called Circus Convoy. The only thing it does that is beyond 1982 uses a bigger ROM. We have 32 4K banks. Can you imagine 32 4K banks? 32 4K banks.
That's insane.
It's a wonderful game.
But that uses so much of your address space for bank switching.
I know. That is a pain in the ass, actually. So, yes, we've done it. We have this company. We're releasing a number of games.
Yeah.
That was our first.
The answer is yes. I will say it is incredibly effing tedious decode for the Atari 2600. It's not nearly as much fun as I remember thinking it was. I don't think I thought it was fun 40 years ago, but I really remember enjoying it a lot. It's an incredible challenge. It's like, so my younger brother's a rock climber. He climbs El Cap. He uses a rope because he's not stupid. But I can't climb El Capitan. It's a tremendous challenge and a tremendous capacity. Programming the 2600 is really hard if you're trying to do something worthwhile.
And there's this illusion that now, because you're in 2023, somehow it will be easier. So when we talked about Audacity games, I was getting all excited and enthused. We did it part-time. It didn't take 3 years full-time. We would do it part-time. Dave said to me, he said, you know, just to put a little damper on it, it's not going to be any easier than it was in 1982. Because it's really, as Tod knows, it's really hard.
It might actually be harder.
So we knew
Not
that
just
going
because
in.
I've slowed down, but because the community has developed a lot of new things to consider.
Yep.
And that's a double-edged sword. But yeah, I was just talking with Matt, the guys at Atari.
You're getting tempted, right?
I'm tempted. I've always been tempted. I've been tempted to write Airworld. Right? The thing the guys at Digital Eclipse, always tempted. The things the guys that they did at Digital Eclipse, you can call Airworld all you want. It's nothing like Airworld.
If you want to partner with us, we have distribution. Come talk to me. We would love to have a Tod Frye game.
The thing is that the Airworld IP belongs to Atari.
Oh, okay. That's a problem.
Cloud World. That's what it's called. There we go.
AERWRLD. It's like, no.
All right. Let's say thank you to these guys. This is really serious.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and to the right are a few more videos from the Portland Retro Gaming Expo 2023. Thanks for watching.